to the February 6th, 2025 LFUCG Ethics Commission's regular meeting. Good to see everyone here. Let's start with the first item on our agenda. This is approval of AO 2024-009. This is an advisory opinion request for which confidentiality was not waived. And so I would entertain a motion from someone on the commission to go into closed session.
I guess that's me, isn't it, huh? So,
David, if you want to be the person, perfect. Excellent.
All right, okay. So I move to go into closed session pursuant to Kentucky Revised Statutes 61.810 subsection 1F and J as discussion of AO 2024-009 may lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an employee, member, or officer and contains the deliberations of a quasi-judicial body regarding individual adjudication.
Thank you, David. We've
You're
got
welcome.
a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to come out of closed session. Anyone?
So moved.
David moves. Do I have a second? Got a second from Brenda. All signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we are out of closed session. Do I have a motion with respect to AO 2024-09?
So I move that the chair sign the opinion AO 2024-009
As presented?
as presented. Thank you.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Next one on the agenda item, and maybe Evan, you can speak to this, is proposed amendment to section 25-23 of the Ethics Act. And that's one of the first of two that are proposed amendment discussions.
Yeah, and Mackenzie can probably talk about this too, but there's been discussions recently about potential changes to the Ethics Commission may want to make to the to recommend to the council to make for the Ethics Act, and so the council clerk and Mackenzie have taken a look, a brief look at some of the the stuff that might impact them the most, and that's the two that have been on the agenda for tonight. That first one is the 2523. Obviously, as you know, anybody who's been involved in complaints, that's the chapter involving the complaint process, right? Somebody files a complaint, you have a hearing, usually within 30 days. You send a letter to them, providing them the hearing date, which should be within 30 days of receipt of the complaint. You have a preliminary inquiry. If we find we have jurisdiction, if the Ethics Commission finds they have jurisdiction and that there's a minimal factual basis for the complaint, then it actually goes into an actual hearing afterward, scheduled at a later date. And then obviously based on that hearing, both sides present evidence, and then the Ethics Commission can make a determination as to penalty as provided in the penalty section of the Ethics Act. So the question of potential, whether or not the Ethics Commission is potentially interested, and I can bring something back next time if you all are interested, is a potential amendment to 2523, basically to allow the chair to potentially be able to review the complaints when they're filed, to make a determination as to whether or not the Ethics Commission has jurisdiction. And then potentially, if they don't, then it would come back on the next agenda item, just for the Ethics Commission to have a better understanding of what happened. So it's a public, something that's publicly announced. So it's not just always in private, but basically allow those instances where the chair can make the determination of whether or not they have jurisdiction in those cases, for instance, involving LFUCG employees and potentially ones that involve police and fire, as those have specific statutory references for discipline that goes outside the Ethics Commission's purview. So that was their first one, and if that's something that you're interested in potentially exploring, I can definitely bring back more language. I think that's still generally being discussed as it pertains to whether or not it's just the chair, whether or not it propose potentially a committee is made of Ethics Commission members to make that determination beforehand. So it's not just on the chair. So that those are some options. I think it's probably the best to leave it in the Ethics Commission's hands instead of going outside the Ethics Commission to make those determinations, since it is, the filing of and hearing of complaints are the Ethics Commission's purview. But I just wanted to check to see what you're all interested in potentially doing that, because as you know, we tend to get complaints sometimes, and those complaints a lot goes into them that then end up being that that the Ethics Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over. So everybody's spending all of that time. And now, of course, it's all very important work. I'm not trying to say, of course, that hearing complaints of ethical issues is something that the Ethics Commission wants to try to avoid, but there are those considerations. I wasn't sure if, based on those considerations, whether or not that's something you all are potentially interested in exploring, and if so, I can bring something back. I have something more. And for that second one, when I get into it, I actually have something drafted for that, because I think it's something that's a lot easier to be done. I think that this first one might involve a little bit more drafting that we didn't have the opportunity to do now. But I wanted, before I gauged everybody's input in it, because obviously it takes time to do these drafting stuff. So if you're not interested in going that route, I don't want to necessarily have to draft something in. If that's something you're not, if the Ethics Commission is interested in potentially still hearing those every complaint that comes in a preliminary inquiry, then we wouldn't have that amendment. But if there's an interest in streamlining the process, then I can definitely look into it and send something back to you.
I've got some thoughts, but I'd like to hear from other members of the commission first.
Yeah, I think something.
Go ahead.
Just from the council clerk office point of view, it is very hard to take somebody's complaint and then know that it won't lead anywhere, because it doesn't meet the 3 criteria of jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission, time frame, and then factual basis, and put these people through give them the hope that maybe their complaints will be able to be handled, and then for them to get before the Ethics Commission and realize that this isn't the right body for them to take this complaint to. And so I think Abby and I both feel that, it's not just for our benefit as an Ethics Commission, but it's also for the benefit of the people who are filing the complaint, because it just seems like we're giving them the runaround. And when they're filing an ethics complaint to begin with, that's the last thing you want to do. So.
Jerry, you had a
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and I don't, at least initially, have any problem with it just being the chair or some individual that makes the determination as to the jurisdiction. My issue with this rule, if we are going to make a change to it, has always been really something different, and that is that when these things happen, and we haven't had a whole lot of them, we often get the complaint, and then we get to a meeting, and at the next meeting, the respondent might be attending and may be there to answer questions or something like that. But prior to that, we don't have a written response from the respondent. And I think the rule would be, I think it would be better. I don't know that it would be mandatory that they provide, but a lot of times I don't have any idea when I'm coming into that meeting what the other side of the argument is going to be, and and I think it is always helpful, or I think it would almost always be helpful if we had an opportunity for a written response on the other side before we got to our first meeting where we were taking evidence or talking about the inquiry. So if that could be, I think, Evan, you may have heard me moan about this before, but if that could maybe be considered, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah. And I don't think, I think we've been putting it, to your point, I think we've been putting it in our letters that they can if they so choose. I think we could, a lot of the rules of the preliminary inquiry and all that stuff are, the preliminary inquiry rules and the hearing rules are made by you all. There's a really old ethics opinion resolution that was passed decades ago at this point, that sets the procedures, and so that could easily be something that we add as a procedure beforehand. You provide.
So we may not have to change this.
I don't think you need an ordinance change for that. I'm more thinking in terms of the Ethics Act clearly says you have a complaint within 30 days. You have the preliminary inquiry, and then if there's a minimal factual basis and there's jurisdiction, then you have the main hearing. It doesn't really give all that much discretion to the body to like they would in federal court for pro se plaintiffs, or even some internal LFUCG boards do similar things as well.
Association has a dismissal without investigation, because it doesn't meet the initial very low burden.
And I'm not even thinking of necessarily, in my thoughts, and of course it's just from me, not necessarily getting into the facts, right? In that determination.
Right, it's jurisdictional.
It's just jurisdictional. So it does, you having a hearing to determine, for instance, if you're an employee, your plaintiff, doesn't give the body very much anything additional that you wouldn't already know from the filing of the complaint. It's just literally based on the filing of it's basically like a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim for all of you attorneys. So it's, it doesn't matter about what the text says. So it's the body of the complaint is not something that jurisdiction has. The Ethics Commission has jurisdiction of. So that's what I was thinking. It wasn't necessarily getting into the facts. Just the jurisdiction is potentially something that you can.
So, in that, David, who?
Yeah.
Started to speak.
So,
David, that you?
Yes. So, Evan, do we have bylaws? Are we? It seems to me I remember reading something in the Ethics Act which says the commission can kind of set its own procedures its own rules for proceedings. So
yeah,
and that's one thing that I was going to recommend for the next meeting, Evan and Mackenzie, is maybe as part of the packet, providing what we have as the procedures for the hearings. Because David, I think that's what you're referring to take a look at.
Yeah,
and that in and of itself might warrant some updating. One of the things that as Evan was mentioning, 2523 1 says that other requirements established by the Ethics Commission. Those would be things that we could change ourselves without, as I understand it, without the council needing to weigh in on. Mm-hmm. So we could act more quickly. But I think it would be helpful for everyone to have that if they don't already.
Yeah. That's the resolution that I was mentioning that was a couple of decades old, I think, at this point, that we provide to the respondent and the complainant upon every receipt of a complaint. When we send out the letter, we send out those rules. So we can definitely make sure that those are in your packet for the next meeting. And I can just give them to you off of a packet. I could just send them to you if you'd like. We just can't have, the commission just can't have discussions of it outside of the meeting. But yeah, no, that's definitely something I can provide after this.
Other thoughts before I share mine?
Yeah, so I noticed in reading the minutes from November that in those minutes, Ashley had represented, or AJ, you had actually asked that the law department provide some ideas for us to do a kind of open meeting brainstorm session in regards to the Ethics Act and whether there are other provisions in regards to the Ethics Act. I had some questions about the jurisdiction of the Ethics Act over some commissions, but not others, and how that works. And to have a discussion of that and perhaps provide some guidance, I would find helpful. So I guess my point is that do we need to expand what's being suggested here for the next meeting as to something more, something a little broader regarding our review of the Ethics Act, which probably isn't a bad idea for us to do it periodically,
Yeah.
since, you know, it's the document, it's the rule under which we operate. So.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, like I was mentioning, I think a lot, these two were like the ones that I think the council clerk had ideas about it. This isn't one of those things that then we'll send these two to the council. I think the idea was this is going to be part of the discussion, trying to break it down into manageable parts. So
Right.
as we're not sitting here, all you guys are volunteers, obviously, sitting here at 5:30 in the afternoon, in the evening, for 4 hours going over each section of the Ethics Act. As much as I'm sure all of you would enjoy talking about the Ethics Act for that long, but I think that was my main idea, and of course it's all up to you. But the idea of trying to break it down into manageable parts. So if you have any suggestions for future ideas, we can, you can just, we can, we can go into those in the next section. So, and of course we can potentially have one section at a time discussions, or the chair could make
Right.
a committee for the review of the Ethics Act, that they could have separate meetings and then report back to the commission. There's a whole lot of ways that we can do stuff like that to make it easier and make sure that everybody's, time's valued.
And Evan, in that regard, could you do a short memo to me, or maybe even the whole commission, about what the options are, so that by next time we'll have an idea of procedurally how we can pursue that consistent with the Open Meetings Act?
Yeah, the point is to just make sure that your discussions are in open meetings, and
Exactly.
not email chains or anything like that, which we're not doing. So it's not an issue.
So
Chrissy, Brendan, go ahead, David. Sorry.
I was going to say, so in terms of these two sections of the Ethics Act that were included in the packet, there's nothing for us to do at the moment, but the next meeting we will have.
So I have something for that second one. I haven't got into that yet.
Okay, all right, excuse me. Okay.
So we're still on just the first one.
Yeah, we're still on the
right.
first one. And I can,
So-
if something that's, AJ hasn't mentioned his comments yet, but I can, like I said, I can present the actual draft text next time if you're interested.
As the chair, first of all, I'm in support of sort of the I don't want to call it gatekeeper, but there are clearly complaints that we have received that fall outside of our jurisdiction, and I hate that we can't communicate earlier to either the complainant or the respondent that, there's no way that this is going to fit within what authority we have. So I'm in favor of that. I think whether it's the chair, whether it's a committee of three, I do like the idea that the complainant may have an opportunity to take that before the entire commission if they disagree, to say, no, I think it is part of your jurisdiction, here's why. While working with this, the two other things that I think that can and should be addressed within 2523 itself is looking more closely at how we can soften in some respect the 30-day within receipt of the complaint language of subset 2. And the reason for that is I have seen us struggle at times with getting quorum and getting a date that is consistent with not only the complainant, but the respondent and the respective counsel. And so something in there that within 30 days, the commission will attempt to schedule something again to give some cushion, because it is tough to get people together. I don't want to frustrate the complainant by saying, look, I filed my complaint, it's 33 days and I still haven't heard anything. And so I want sort of that buffer. The other thing that I would suggest is where in number 2, again, subpart 2, we talk about the respondent having the right to counsel, but we don't talk about the complainant. And I think that, again, if we're looking at this to make suggestions anyway, and Evan, if you're going to come back to us with some suggestion, I do think that even if the complainant chooses not to have counsel, I think by putting it in the act, it makes them aware that they have the opportunity if they so choose.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure I can add those two. The plan, it would be to have the whole statutory section before you, so you can see the whole thing in its context. So that way, next time, if and when you have other suggestions, you can make it'll be in your packet, so you'll have time to think about it beforehand. If you have any other ideas, we can definitely, it'll be the discussion there and to potentially add it. Like I said, I don't plan to introduce these to the council in a piecemeal way. I think the best possible way is to present it all as a package. I think they'd appreciate that. And there's statutory requirements anytime we change the Ethics Act to send to the state and all this stuff. So it would really be administratively easier to send it all to the state in one package instead of 10 times in a year.
Totally understand.
So it's a evolving discussion, but I plan to send the whole statutory section to you the next meeting, so that way you can see it all instead of just the part that we're talking about. Give an opportunity to review the section as well.
In any further discussion to provide Evan with some ideas for proposed amendments to section 2523 before we go to 2513?
Nope, I don't.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to the next agenda item, which is the consideration of possible proposed amendments to 2513, 2 and 5. And I see that sharing of screens.
Yeah, I think it worked, right?
You did.
You can see it. Okay, good. And this might be more of a discussion for Mackenzie to discuss, since it's more of an administrative thing for the council clerk.
Mackenzie, what are your thoughts?
So, when it comes to candidates, we feel like there's kind of unclear language in the Ethics Act about when we collect from candidates, and we just like to tighten that up a little bit, because and I'm trying to see which line exactly is the one that it deals with, but Abby and I were talking about this, and I know she's talked about this with you, Evan, but basically candidates are required to file the year that they run. So, like, for example, if you have a candidate who ran in 2024, they are required to file for 2023, which they would file in 2020, or they would, this is so confusing. Okay, they ran in 2024, so they are required to file an ethics or a financial interest statement for the year 2023. Is that correct, Evan?
Yeah.
Okay, and so then the year after their election, whether they lose, or if they lose in the primary, or if they lose in the general election, they're required to file a complaint for the year that they ran for office, which would be 2024. So it's always kind of awkward when you're like, oh, we have to ask you to file a financial interest statement. Like, sorry that you lost. Like, let's rub salt in your wounds by, and there was also like some concern that, do we have to have them file for the year after they like ran for office? Like, would they have to file in 2026 for 2025, which would be the year after they ran?
Yeah. So just for clarification, So the Ethics Act requires everybody to file financial interest statements. Obviously, you all have to file it. You also have to file it. You also have to file it for the full year after you leave. So that's been interpreted to be, so for instance, like Mackenzie said, if you're a candidate and you're a candidate for 2024, you file the one in 2024 for 2023. You file the one in 2025 for 2024, and you also file the one in 2026 for 2025. So you're basically 2 years after you ran, you filed a financial interest statement for 2020 for the first full year. I think the idea would be for the candidates is to only make them have to file it in the next year after they ran, so that would cover the year that they ran. So that way people have the idea of, okay, we know what your financial interests were in the year that you ran, as opposed to having for the whole year, covering the whole year, full year after you lost. And that would just be for candidates, not for you all. It wouldn't be for commissioners or elected officials, just for candidates.
And Dave, you've got a question, and Chris.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Evan, what was the rationale behind having, for example, candidates who lose an election to still file a financial disclosure for the year in which the election was held? I mean, how would that information affect, the LFUCG's governance responsibilities regarding conflict of interest? I mean,
well, I think it's largely so that way the public, because these are financial interest statements or documents that the public can see, that they can, so that way the public can potentially, even after they've lost, they can see what their interests were, to see potentially if there could have been a violation of the Ethics Act during that period of time, right? You have that statute of limitations. So that's the idea. Is I'm not sure what the intent was, why we required it, for instance, in 2026 when you ran in 2024, because that would cover 2025, a whole year after you ran. So that's why this is trying to, I think, correct that a little bit, to just be, hey, we want to make sure you have the interest statement the year before you were a candidate and the year that you were a candidate. And I think those are the ones that we're most interested in, right? And that this amendment would allow that. And like I said, it's just for candidates. It's not for elected officials or ethics commission members or commissioners or directors.
Okay, Chrissy.
So my question was, Evan, when you were talking about when you have to file, were you pulling that from a specific provision somewhere?
So in 2513, I think it should still be on your screen.
It is.
It 1 through 4 is basically the people who have to file financial interest statements annually.
Okay.
And then 5 says basically not only are you supposed to do it annually while you're a candidate, a mayor, commissioner, a division director, but you also have to do it for the first full year after you leave. So, which has been interpreted, like I said, for those instances where you leave or are a candidate or whatever in 2024, we require you to file one in 2025 and in 2026. So this would stop the 2026 for candidates and only require it in 2025 in those particular instances.
That's the change that you're.
Yes, that's 5.
proposing.
Yeah. So basically,
Okay.
yeah. So basically, it's the all persons formerly occupying the positions identified in blah, 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 this section for the first full calendar year following the end of their term of office or employment. That's always been a very strange provision, because a candidate is not employed by LFUCG or a officer of LFUCG. So it was already not drafted all that well.
Well,
so
Would it be better suited for 2514, which is when to file statements?
I think that one provides basically that it happens in April, right? Or within a certain time after April of each year, and within a certain amount of time after you started running. I think this in this section makes the most sense because it already has the provision about you have to file it for the first full year for all of these other people. But then for candidates, the rule's different in 6. 6 is the underline, the one that I was suggesting adding with the crossouts. So I think it makes sense in this section because that's where you're putting that's where the requirement is for everybody to file a financial interest statement for the first full year after you leave. Because then we're saying except candidates.
And I think generally too, first of all, to David's point, I think that most people who would be a candidate and who lose an election aren't thinking that they should have to file a report a year and a half after they've lost. And anecdotally, and certainly Evan and Mackenzie can probably talk even more to this than I can, but it is at least my impression that the people who we have had to hound to get their financial interest statements back are those who were the candidates who would fall into this situation of why in the world do I have to file a financial interest statement when I lost 2 years ago?
Yes. We had a candidate. Sorry, AJ. We had a candidate,
please.
I think last year, maybe like into the new year, who remember we couldn't find him at all, and it was like, why are we putting this guy down if he's a year and a half out of running for his office? We can't find him. So like, how much effort do we put into trying to find him when it seems like, you know, he ran as a candidate in 2022, we can't find him for this. So, you know, it was just like, he's a candidate who didn't win his election. How much stock do we need to put into this?
Yes. Well, and so, Evan, I guess my only question now, and I got a comment in a second, but my question right now is from the commission standpoint, what are you asking us to do now? Are you seeking input on these particular red lines, and you're going to bring the whole package back?
Yeah,
and are you satisfied with what comments you've received thus far for the next step at the next meeting or subsequent meetings?
Yeah, no, I was thinking of, you know, we don't have to the Ethics Commission doesn't have to necessarily vote on it now. I planned, you know, I think it makes sense to, if you don't have any other ideas about this section, then I'll add it to the whole list that we have, and then at the very end we'll approve it then.
Well, and I will say, to Chrissy's point, I think it's a good one, looking at 2514 to see the extent to which we may need to also do a comparable amendment there to make it consistent and or clearer. And the other thing that we may want to think about as a commission with any of these changes, or even things that we don't change, that we think that the general public might benefit from when they're thinking about running, when they're thinking about filing a complaint, maybe coming up in conjunction with the law department, you know, a pamphlet that says, this is the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. You know, this is why financial interest statements are important, and these are the people who need to file them and when, so that they don't have to know where to look in the Ethics Act to find some of the things that might end up making it easier for us, the commission members, not dealing with some things, and also being of benefit to the public. So just something to think about.
I love that idea.
Evan, could I ask you just a kind of it's not a procedural, but kind of a technical question? So when all of these changes to the recommended changes to the Ethics Act goes to the council, will it be the commission recommending to the council, or will it be the law department recommending to the council with the endorsement of the commission?
I think it would be at the recommendation of the Ethics Commission is how we usually would do it.
Okay. All right.
It's not usually the law department making the recommendation. We brought it on behalf of the Ethics Commission.
Okay.
Who took into consideration staff's considerations, right?
Sure. Thanks.
And of course, the council could very well not be on board with some of the changes. But
That's
yeah.
their prerogative. That's why they're
That's
elected.
the legislator. So yeah.
So any further comments or questions for Evan or Mackenzie with respect to at least these two sections proposals for them to, as they say, noodle on? Okay, hearing nothing further, on to approval of minutes. And did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes? I did find some things here and there that I'm happy to walk through with folks. I don't know if folks did as well. Mackenzie, if you've got those up, I'll start with the 28th, August 28th.
All right. I'm making notes here.
First page, paragraph starting Mr. Martin. Third line near the end of that line where it says Division of Water Quality Wood. BE.
All right, can add.
Next paragraph. If the company in question had already been chosen to fill the bid, and I think that you can eliminate the rest of that sentence to make it clearer.
Okay, next.
Same paragraph, last sentence where it says had been left opened, ended. I think it's just open. Next paragraph, and I apologize. I personally had not had a chance to read these before.
No, you're totally fine.
Next paragraph, Mr. Bailey, second line. I think it would be clearer if we said, or if Mr. Talbot, or Tackett rather, excuse me,
Okay.
was just an employee. Page 2, middle of the page where it starts, the paragraph, Miss Christine Stanley. It's like the one sentence paragraph. Second line, you can take out income or income.
All right.
Back in the section. Bottom of the page, last paragraph. Mr. Adam Tackett would need, take out may not and.
All right.
And that's all I got on that one, y'all. Anybody else?
That was a form of a motion, right? To amend the minutes.
Yes. That was the chair. That chair moving consistent with the one thing that the chair had seen.
You have a second?
Do I have a second?
All right, second.
David, thank you for seconding. I'm sure that motion, I'm obviously not used to making the motion, so I apologize for that truncated motion. Any further discussion on the August 28th, 2024 minutes?
Was that motion voted on?
Not yet.
Okay.
All in favor of approving the August 28th, 2024 minutes of the commission as amended?
Do we have to approve the changes first?
We would be, so you voted to on the motion to amend, and that was voted in favor, right? And then now you vote on the, and then when you vote on that, and then you vote again to vote for the minutes as amended.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to accept the amendments to the minutes that were presented. That motion has been made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? So I will now entertain a motion to approve the August 28th, 2024 minutes as amended by the
So
previous
moved.
motion.
Oh.
David moves. Do I have a second? Brenda seconds. All signify by, all agree, all approve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next one is the November 6th, 2024 proposed minutes. Any proposed changes? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the November 6th, 2024 Ethics Commission minutes, meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Nate, second. All in favor signify by, all in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The last one, I do have one suggestion or change. The paragraph, second paragraph, Chair Singleton, waived is misspelled. Does anyone have any additional changes?
I move we accept the changes as made by the chair.
We have a motion to amend. Do we have a second? Carrie seconds. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the January 7th, 2025 LFUCG Ethics Commission meeting minutes as amended. All in favor, or do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Gary seconds, Brenda seconds. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for helping me soldier through that one.
Good work, Chair.
Thanks. Ethics tip line report. Evan, is that you?
Yeah, I didn't see anything in the packet, so it might be something that I bring back next time. For the tip line for these, I didn't. So we'll do that on the next meeting. I'll just add that to the list.
Sounds good. Thank you. Last item on the agenda, the financial interest statement update. Ironically enough, given our previous discussion.
Yeah, well, it's that time of the year again. So, the financial interest statements for 2024 went out on the 10th, so they're all out now. We already have had like some filled out and returned. We've already had a few come back through, like, you know, they've been couldn't reach sender, so we've been looking for other addresses to send them, and we are running into an issue that I guess I should bring up with you guys. We have a former LFUCG employee who retired, and we sent the letter to the address that she has listed in her financial interest statement for the last couple years, but it seems that she has moved and not left a forwarding letter. So I'm not really sure. We've kind of Googled her, and there's really not like a good stable address that we feel comfortable sending this to, but just if you had any ideas on that. And the other thing I will say is that Larry Roberts finally got his in, and the poor man was like, I'm so sorry, do I owe one for this year? And I was like, no, you're done, you're good. Don't worry about it.
So all outstanding financial interest statement forms are taken care of.
Yeah.
With respect to the LFUCG employee who is retired, I wonder if the human resources folks might have an address for them.
We did ask
Yeah.
them that they did not.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can. I can check to see the law department's resources. As you know, we have ways of finding people.
We've got time. In fact, in that regard, so
I will say she is a much
Hope they're
higher
legal, huh?
employee, so
They are.
it makes it possible that the law department has her address.
Well, and let me also add from a financial interest statement standpoint, these are all due, the forms are due on April 15th, tax day. And let me encourage each of the Ethics Commission members ourselves to get our financial interest statements in. It would look bad if we are asking all other employees, candidates, et cetera, to submit these by April 15th, and lo and behold, one of us is not fine. So please,
And-
I'm speaking for myself as well. Please, AJ,
Yeah.
submit it by April 15th.
I'm proud to say mine's in the mail, so.
Very good.
So and also, usually we send letters, I think we usually send a friendly letter after the deadline. So if there's a date that the council member or the commission wants us to send those by, you can obviously, you can make the motion and we can send it by that. That way we don't have to come back and ask. We can, if we want to set some kind of schedule out of letter dates, then we can definitely, because as you know, we have requirements as to one of them has to be certified before we can start fining them. And so a lot of the times we get in the situation where towards the end of the year and we haven't talked to you guys about fining them, and it ends up being the middle of the next year by the time we get around to fining them. So if we want to try to have some kind of schedule, we can think about setting it.
Well, in that regard, Mackenzie, and we're creating a long list of agenda items for the next meeting, which is actually May 1st, which will be 15 days after the April 15th deadline. So at that point, we should have a good idea of who's not responding. And so as an agenda item, it would be good to provide you guys with a schedule for the commission to vote upon a schedule, and to Evan's point, a timeline.
Yep.
Okay, when are we going to do just the friendly letter? When are we going to do a friendly letter that is certified mail? When are we going to send the not so friendly letter? Of schedule, so that we can authorize you guys to go ahead and act accordingly, consistent with what we vote upon.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Evan, could I ask, what's the process or procedure for reviewing the disclosures once they're received? Is your department doing that?
There really isn't much of a review that goes on. I think it's generally they file them and then we can review them if a situation comes up. I think it's generally how that works. We don't, I look at them when somebody open records requests them. I think is when I try to take a look, and that's just to make sure that we're not providing home addresses of individuals who probably shouldn't have home addresses provided. But we don't do like a review of before every kind of legislation's passed to make sure they don't have a financial interest statement. That's that their financial interest statement matches. But that's we don't generally review those.
I will say that we had last year at least 2 different open records requests for people who wanted every single financial interest statement, and then there was also somebody who just wanted all elected officials. So I don't know if we've told you guys this, and this could also be up for review next time we have a meeting if it's something that you guys would talk about. But we did go ahead and because they are technically open records and available to the public, we have a Google Drive with everybody's on there, but it's redacted and it's not available unless you ask for it. So all of the addresses and the phone numbers that you may be reached at are not available to the public.
If there are no other comments or discussion items, that concludes our agenda. Great seeing you guys. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
We've got two motions. I'll take one as the motion and the other as a second. Mackenzie, you get to decide which one.
All right.
Maybe we'll choose alphabetical order this time. Maybe we'll, who knows? But I've got a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, y'all.
And
Motion
don't know
is
why I
adjourned.
raised my hand.
Great seeing everyone.
Take care.
Y'all too.
Bye
Good
now.
night, everybody.
Bye.